And hello again, this is Philip at thebest3d.com with Project Dog Waffle, and we're going to explore a few more techniques for creating clouds. Now, not these kind of clouds, because these are photographic, but we will work on something like that too in the future. What I wanted to do is show you some more experiments with, oh man, let's go and relog in. Alright, what was it? With any luck, I didn't mistype it. There you go. Let's go and use my pictures and the grid view. Yeah, there you go. Alright, so one thing I wanted to do is take a look at some of these pictures here. Alright, so space art essentially. Let me zoom in a little bit. And there's a couple of techniques that I'd like to show, especially for sort of an appearance of multiple layers of clouds. This one here has it also. You see there's kind of a nebula with a lot of bright light, probably a star in the middle, pushing some of this protoplanetary mass around. There's actually a planet here, or a bigger planet here, there's a moon here, but then there's also some dark matter right in front, and it's not done by layers, it's done by a couple of sequences and stacking something on top, or painting something on top, or combining something on top. So I wanted to show you some of that technique. First point is going to go to the filter, and by the way, you can do this with PD Howler. You can also do it with PD Artist, the $27 version that doesn't do animation, but does have many of the tools except for anything related to animation. So here we go. Let's go and render plasma noise, and done. All right, so that's one level, and then we do another one, and with that. I'm gonna go just do the same again, but this time I'm gonna change the mode from opaque to complement or difference. We'll do a couple of things here. Let's do complement. And what you notice is that it looks like there's an average gray level cloud on top or in front of something different, the ones in the back. So that already gives a little bit of a sense of depth, like there are two systems there now. And you can also actually change the colors from one to the other, so you can give it a little bit of a reddish or a bluish appearance on one end or the other. Try something like this, or even both of them in the blue, like a darker and a brighter, and then you'll see very different. See, now here you have, for instance, a higher level cloud that appears to be white. You're looking at the sky almost here, right? And then you have a high layer cloud system that still is getting sunshine, and then you have some darker clouds below that are in front here. And that's what I'm talking about. It quickly gives you very interesting looking parameters to work with here. Now there's also the style here, the color model HSV adds another component which is great for space art, because it gives a more sudden change and a contrast, like as if there are some clouds. If you change the size here, you see some parts that get concentrated, or like condensed, and a bit like the area of the Horsehead Nebula, not the Horsehead itself, but the stuff below it that shows definitely some masses of gas being pushed away by the bright stars, the photonic blast, the wind, the solar wind, and so that's one place. And then the other place is this one. That's one I would start with, perhaps. Go to opaque mode and start with something like that. See, that's what I'm talking about. See this light part against the red, and in fact, if you want to not have it against red and mostly green and bluish, then go and change a few things here. For instance, you can go to adjust color and reduce the amount of green, right, and reduce the amount of blue perhaps, or the amount of red, and get it to the style that you want, right? So now you have the eye usually will be more sensitive. The human eye will be more sensitive to red material, so it appears to be closer to us. If it's reddish, we're more sensitive to it. And then you can do the darker blue for the deep parts in deep dark space back there. So that's one thing I would try here, perhaps, is something like that. And then if it's too much saturation, one thing you can do is turn it more into a grayscale, or do the filter for hue saturation value, right? Under adjust there, hue saturation value. First of all, you can change the hue to different. There you go. That's one I like too, by the way, where the parts that should be darker, I mean brighter, are the ones in the back, because you're gonna have some stars embedded there somewhere. So that's a really good one too. But then again, reduce the saturation as well here, or to the contrary, make it brighter, make it darker. All sorts of different ways to give it a bit more the look that you want. So I'm gonna go with this. Store this every once in a while. That's part of the workflow. I want to have a snapshot of that. It's not saved to hard drive though, so make sure you save it to file also from the file menu every once in a while. Or if you're lazy and you want to do a quick save, you could do a clipboard, copy to clipboard, right? Another one that I also recommend is using the general file converter. You could simply grab a copy, right? Image. It already did that right here since I launched it. But if you make any changes here and you say, cool, I want that image, just tab back to the general file converter and grab the image, right? Connect, import from PD. So now you have a snapshot here, and you can actually zoom to fit to see it completely. That's sort of a safe place to have it as well. It's not as safe as if it's now on file, but from here you can get it to file as well, save it. Or you can launch some other tools. So that's just a little side note to that. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll click here to restore this image, and I'm gonna go build another layer on top. Not really a layer in terms of, you know, like imaging, Photoshop layers or anything like that. Just another rendering of the clouds here on top. I'm gonna go plasma noise again, and this time I'm gonna go to that non-opaque mode, like difference mode. See, look at that, some more stuff that looks so awesome if we start exploring that in a grayscale. For instance, if we go to image, the grayscale, make sure you use this one here, expose through lens, because there you can go and adjust to prefer more the reddish or more the bluish, and very quickly get such a different appearance. In fact, one thing I'll do both, and then we'll do an animation, a transformation from one to the other. That's another great experiment to play with, to see if there's some sort of a plasma shockwave you can mimic that way. So we'll go into the reds, right? And okay that, store this image, there it is. And then we'll undo to go back to the colored version and do another grayscale conversion. This time we'll go to the other side of the spectrum here, something like this. Okay that. So now we have two grayscale images that are drastically different, but still somewhat related and correlated. So I'm going to go store this one as well. And the thing I want to do is really do a transition from one to the other. Right? Do sort of an animation. Alright, so let's do that. Let's create an animation with just 2 frames. There you go. Right, and then the first frame will save this one, we'll click this, the next frame will click this. So we now have these 2 frames here, and we can play that. It's a very quick play. You can set the frames per second to 30 frames, but there's really not much to animate through here. So what we'll do is we'll do a transition, we'll do a time stretch, right click. Actually, first thing we'll do is we'll save this animation, we'll store it to disk, and then that way we can quickly get back to it. Alright, so now we'll go and do a time stretch, and we'll say click 2 times, 4 times, do a couple of times here to stretch it into maybe 2 or 3 seconds. This is 4 seconds roughly. And do we want frame blending? You bet we want that, right? Because if we don't, let me show you what happens if we don't do frame blending. But I'm doing this on just 16 frames total. Without frame blending, you'll have each of the given frames replicated a few times, probably 8 times in this case, and the total number of frames will be 16. Right? So each of the 2 frames get held or hold it for 8 frames. And so in the end, you don't really have much animation across these frames, no changes, until you suddenly jump to the next one and you have 8 frames of that. So that's not a very cool animation, I would say. Sometimes it's what you want if you just want to slow down that blinking. But another technique, let me restore this animation. Another technique that we probably would want to do is right click here for the time stretch to go with the frame blending, right? And this time we will see a transition, right? So that's sort of the animation we are hoping to achieve. Now if we wanted that last frame to hold after that, to stay there for a little while, you can do that here too. Let's go and restore it to the first animation, and you can go to the second frame and simply add one more. And you notice the layout here, the interface is a little bit different perhaps from what you have if you have version 9.6, because I'm using 9.6 and beyond, and this is a beta version, or alpha actually, not even beta yet, of Howler 10. So it's under development, still very much similar in a number of ways, but also some great new stuff we are not going to show in this tutorial yet. But what I want to do is add another frame, so we now have 3 frames, and that's a copy of this one. And we could do the same at the beginning if we wanted to hold that frame at first as well. So just add one more, and then you notice that we now have 4 frames, 2 that are identical and 2 that are identical again, these 2 here, but then we have a transition between these 2. So right click on that, time stretch, and multiply that a few times. So now you have a transition of, you have a total of 128 with frame blending, but frame 1 and frame 2 are the same. Actually that's frame 0. And frame 2, they are the same. Frame 1, and then frame 2 and 3 are the same again. So that means essentially we're going to see no changes for a while until it changes in the middle, and then it's done changing. Boom. So that's one way to do it. And then there is another technique that I like a lot too, which is to simply start from these 2, perhaps give it a bit more, like replicate this one, take the last one, replicate this one. So we have 4 frames. And we're going to use the motion estimated interpolation, the motion estimation. Right, so filter, animated. Again, that's something you don't do in PD Artist. For that, you do need the animation capabilities. So here's the motion prediction module. I'm going to do a dry run first and say do not scan for dropped frames, because I know there are some and I don't want it to think about it. I'm going to go simply, let's give it about 22. And go. So that's going to turn into 40. In quick appearance, but it's actually different in some subtle ways. I'm going to go to 55 and give it even more time, 101 frames. All right, and that could be really interesting to do some explosive dynamic, thermodynamic or turbulent displacements of what's going on in this animation. Let's go perhaps even more calculations, make it a little bit something like this here. Let's go to 1 and keep that. There you go. And then perhaps even more. Let's give it something like that. Let's see what the number, 247 frames. We should be able to handle that. So I'm going to go and stop the dry run and go. So now we're building that new animation, and we'll be able to take it to the next level from there. And one of the next levels may be actually to introduce some sort of coloration, right? Maybe a coloration that we see in here, right? Maybe a gradient. So let's go pick up a gradient from here. For instance, right tool here on the gradient tool, there is a linear gradient grabber, and with that you can grab your own gradients just going across here. Something like that. So let's say you want to go from dark to bright along these shades, but also dark again and some others, something like this. So now we have a gradient that we can see. Where's the gradient image here? Gradients. Oh, these are the preset, but there's the sweep editor. That's where the gradient went. There you go. That's what you do when you use the gradient grabber. That's where it goes, into the sweep editor. All right, the same tool that you can see on the view sweep editor. P for playtime, I call it. Okay, so because that's serious playtime when you use this, right? So let's say I'm doing, oh, I don't know what to expect here. Let's do something like this. and I want to remap. Where's my grayscale? Let's undo a few times until I get back to my grayscale. There. I want to remap onto that particular gradient. So I'm going to go to Filter, Color, Map to Current Gradient. And that gives you a totally different appearance. I'm not going to do that across the entire, well, actually, I guess I could do that across the entire frame sequence, and you'll see the benefit of this animation even more enhanced, but a very different appearance now. Now, this could be really great for some planetary surfaces, right? If we spherize that, let's close this tool here, and actually use the spherize tool. Let's go and store this quick, because this might be an interesting one to have. Store animation to disk. And so that way we have perhaps some sort of an animation on the planet surface itself. You know, some cataclysmic geothermal or geofrozen event or something. This is very frozen in appearance and coloring. So I'm going to go and apply the transform here for spherize. And you see how that spherize takes care of that. Maybe we want a little bit more of ambient, so we see also the darker parts. Maybe we want only one light source on one side. Let's have it on the upper right corner. Let's move them both into the upper right area. And then so we get this specular here. Maybe instead of point light, we can do directional light. Try to see which one you like better. Size, point light. Perhaps, oh, the distance of the point light, so you get a little bit more of a thin crescent here. Change the brightness of that as well, right? And then there is a specular highlight there. You might want to get rid of that. There's all sorts of little controls here. Point light fall off. There is also, oh, and add some additional bumpiness like terrain. There you go. That looks a little bit more 3D-ish. But one of the things to be aware of is that that terrain is going to be static, whereas the texture we have here, that coloring, is dynamic. It's an image sequence. So I'm going to go, oh, we got another build. Oh no, it got deleted. Okay, so Dan must be deleting and cleaning up, but I'm sure we'll have another build pretty soon. I'm running alpha build R37 here, and it'll probably go to 38 or 39 any moment. So I'm going to go to, let's see, I'm going to go without texture amount. Actually, let's just turn that off. I might want to add a little bit of a blue haze on the like atmospheric on the inside, and then actually apply that across the entire animation sequence. So you see that it's actually changing. So imagine you had something like spiral shapes. I don't know, typhoons or other storm systems showing here. That'd be great to actually show there. In fact, another thing you could do is also shift it sideways before you spherize it, so it looks like the whole thing is spinning. Make it into a spinning animation. There it is, 39 coming in. Okay, we'll install that after this demo. Alright, so one more thing I might want to do is have a little bit of atmospheric blur going to the outside here, a little bit of that blue. So I'll use the filter photographic light diffusion so that it can bleed into the outside here. Alright, so you do this, and you see how there is some atmospheric blur going out, the bright parts prevailing and kind of overlapping to the dark. Don't do too much, but I recommend a fairly good distance on that, so you get a good amount of this. Okay, and then so we'll okay that. So we have that on just this one. Actually, we could have done that on the entire image. You know what? I'm going to take another approach here. I'm going to just grab this as a planet. So one thing we could do, let's do without this atmospheric first, and simply make a selection. Select, actually let's not select by color, so just use the magic wand tool and click here, and then invert the selection, that is, invert selection. So now we have selected the inside, the outside is no longer selected, and then with the inside selected, what we can do is simply go and pick that up as a custom brush. I'm gonna manually grab that. But there's a couple of other techniques. I'm gonna go, where's my custom brush pickup tool there, this one here. Select that and then sort of approximately say where my planet is going to be picked up. There you go, something like that. So that's now my planet. I do have, let me see if I can see the selection. Store selection. Oh no, look at that, I had it inverted. Not quite right. So I need to invert that selection and replace it. Okay, now it's selected. So this one is what I want. So let's go and pick it up again with the custom brush selection tool. And that's why you could actually make a faster approach would be to simply go from the brush menu, right here, use to select it. But that's okay, we got it. I can show it in full opacity. Here's the default 122 32. So here's my full opacity. I'm gonna go and clear the selection. I'm gonna go and have this planet right in here. Actually, I should do this for the entire animation sequence, right? We have 246 frames across this. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, first of all, because I don't want to run out of memory. I'm going to make it resample a little bit smaller. Let's make it half the size. There, 512 by 384. Okay, that. And then I'll be a bit more adventurous and I'll capture the whole thing into an animated brush of this rotating, moving planet. Then I'll be able to composite that with the other stuff. All right, so I'm gonna go and pick this up again. So right now we have this animation like this. There is one jump at the beginning here. That's the frame we usually toss at the end of the motion prediction animation. So here I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna capture that. So I'm gonna go grab the selection again. Where's my magic wand? There it is. And it looks like maybe it picked the opposite. Maybe that's a new feature. Maybe the selection, let's see, store selection. Yeah, it looks like it picks the opposite. So now selecting this actually selects the rest or something like that, or it shows it as black rather than white. Whatever it is, I'm gonna use that selection across the entire frame sequence. Since the planet is not moving, I can easily just rely on that static mask to keep picking these frames up. And at 100%, that's the current size. I can easily pick that up into a custom animated brush. All right, so what I'll do is I'll use this custom brush selector and I'll go to the first frame if I want it from the very first frame, and I get ready to select this. But before I let go and make this my selection, I press and hold the Alt key. Pressing and holding the Alt key tells it not to use just this frame, but all of them. So it's going now as I released the button on my mouse. It's picking up all these frames from the animation sequence. And once it has all of these, it has built a custom animated brush, not just a static custom brush. And I can store and manage a copy of this. And if we have any doubts that this is an animated brush, we can see the film strip here, show film strip, and there it is. That's our little animation. Alright, so I'm gonna go hide film strip, and I'm gonna go even minimize this. So here's our bucket with the animation. Now it's time to, we could paint with that. We can get rid of the selection, clear it, and paint with that. And there's some really cool stuff you can do with that, especially if you reduce the step distance here. You can see it's animating through this as you're painting. Okay, but what I really want to do is put this planet into an animation where we don't do this type of animation, right? But we do perhaps this one, right? So what was this one? Oh wait, that one had only 2, so we need to do this transition with more frames. So let's do this one here. Animation time stretch this time. We'll do we'll do 2 times with frame blending, and then we'll do again the animated motion prediction module. Let's do 123. Let's just be adventurous and daring and just do it without even no wait, that's too many frames. Let's do 55. Yeah, why not? We get 111 new frames, or total frames. Look at this, there's some flow happening here. Did you see that? Check this out. That's what I like about this motion prediction module. It gives you these surprise movements. Look at that. I mean, that's awesome, the stuff you don't expect and you get here. Look at that. How is that for? Oh, cool. Oh, so cool. So we'll use that to create this effect of some sort of a chaotic soup of hot gases flowing together and just keeping the eye and the brain amazed, right, and busy. So what we'll do is we'll create now an animation where we zoom in a little bit, right? So first of all, let's go to the timeline. And actually, no, very first of all, let's go store that, because we might need to go to this a few more times. And what we'll do is have a snapshot that way here. And so what we'll do now is to zoom into that a little bit. So that will be in the transform group, transformations. There it is. There's a transform filter inside this animated timeline. And we can keyframe the gradual scaling into this. All right, so let's say we want to go from this place here, keyframe that, to let's say scale. Don't do too much, right? Just a little bit, and then maybe move a little bit over there too, something like that. Okay, and apply. Alright, so we've got a little zoom action here. And now what we can do is, again, first store this. That's another milestone achieved. And what we'll do now is we'll show the preview of our planet, and we will animate this in a way that's kind of consistent in terms of the way that our spaceship is moving into this soup, into this cloud. Let's go delete the first frame again at the end of the motion prediction module. It's useless, but what we'll do, we'll now go and perhaps place this planet down here and animate it. So I'm going to use the animation, the brush keyframer, the keyframer for the brush, right? So what we do with that is we keyframe where the brush is going to be seen across the timeline. And so if you scrub through that timeline, you can see how now the brush itself is an animated brush, and it is moving and moving its own image here, but it's being rendered against, it's going to be positioned against another image. Now maybe we need to rotate this. Maybe this highlight is going to need to be in place with a star that's over here, a bright star over here on the left. So let's rotate this thing here, give it a different angle, something like that, and we'll have it here at first. So that'll be somewhere like that, right? And then maybe there, right? And so we'll keyframe that, and then we'll go towards the end. Now, because this gas is far away, but the planet is really close, we need to move him a little bit faster. We need to also make him bigger. Let's go scale it up a little bit, something like that. Right, maybe not too big. There you go. Okay, keyframe that, and you now have an animation that goes like this. Right, now maybe you want a linear transition for this interpolation, because otherwise there are some truncation errors and it jumps at the very last frame. You might want to do this, and there's also different styles here. You can do a screen mode if you want to see through it a little bit. If this planet is supposed to be I don't know, a satellite or a spaceship that's semi-transparent, why not? You know, you see both of these animations combined. You could do XOR mode, that's really funky. Let's go stay with the reasonable here, and okay that. And now, by the way, if you didn't like this blue tint, you would really need to change that on the brush before you use it. So let's go back to that. Right here is the stored animated brush. So what we can do is change the hue saturation value right there. Right, with the hue, you can say, okay, let's go into more of a reddish or a greenish tint. And then once you have that, you can also change the saturation, perhaps reduce it, give it a bit more of a grayish appearance, perhaps make it a bit brighter, right? and that actually is all we need to give it that difference. So here we get the brush. We now have this new one, and what we could do is actually also change its appearance in terms of brightness over time, or maybe the opacity. Right, here's the opacity initially, and then going solid. If you wanted that really here and change it over time, there is a timeline editor that you can use for the custom brushes, for the animated brushes. Right here on the brush menu, animated brush, and there's a animated brush timeline. Right, so you can actually change its appearance over time. There's the frame sequence here, just a summary view of it. And when you think about it, all you want to do is change the red or the blue or the component of these RGB channels over time. So you could go to the first frame, and from the first frame, see here's a scrub bar. So you go to the first frame and say we have at first very little red. It's kind of a cool planet, a bit more white, a little bit more red, but not too much, and it is something like this, right? Keyframe that, and then you can go to the other end and add a lot of red. So it's heating up, right? And reduce the blue. It's evaporating the blue. It's drying out. It's becoming a dry planet, kind of like Southern California here. Sad joke, I know. And I'm sipping on a glass of water as I'm saying that. Shame on me. So here we go, and apply this transition. It could be also brightener, changing the brightness, because we know we're going to use it in an animation where it's farther away and it comes closer. So maybe we want it to be also brighter as it comes closer. It's easier to see what's happening there, right? So I'm going to go and render that transition. So we now actually have an animated transition, a new animated transition on this frame sequence in the animated brush. And so once we have that, I may want to do more, so I can keep the render, or I can say no, that's it. We start from blue and go into red, and so we can keep the target, use this destination as the brush. We can minimize this. Maybe we'll get back to it. Store this brush we just grabbed and examine it with the film strip, and you see how it's now changing from the bluish to the reddish. And so that's our new animated brush, and this old one we still keep around, but this one is the one we want to use. Just click it if you want to reload it, and then go back to the brush keyframer and say get the brush. So now we have this also animating in color. See how it goes from a definitely blue tint to a reddish tint. And again, if you wanted to do more things to it, such as add some blur, add some for instance, to make it blur when it's far away and make it crisp when it's closer and you start seeing details, that sort of thing. All sorts of things you can do in that animated sequence that's in the brush itself. Alright, so I'm going to render that now. Enough talk, let's see something. And we can see that the animation is okay. It's not perfect necessarily. We could have seen perhaps some other things to do. But one thing I'll do actually is I'll clear the keyframes and do another animation with another instance of the planet right here. This one needs to rotate differently. This one needs to also be much smaller. Maybe it's a moon or something. We probably should give it different coloration. I'm lazy. I'm not going to do that here today. I'm going to just rotate this a little bit more. And I'm going to want to make it look like this one is indeed in front. So I'm going to have it here initially. Perhaps that's the wrong angle now. Something like this. And even smaller. Right, something like this, and keyframe that, and then towards the end I want it to actually have passed the other one already and gone much bigger, because it kind of almost, we flew into it, but it's past us, something like that. So keyframe that, and so now we have an animation like this. Right, now we're looking like we're really flying into this. Let's render that. See how that 3D relationship is starting to build. Now this is still very crisp and clean, and we really want to make it look like, let me turn the preview of the brush off here. Let me make it now look like it's kind of a proto-planetary soup, right? So we don't just see this in the background. We want to feel like we're in it, and we're in it to win it. So we want to have the same planet here. Let's go store this animation we have so far. And we want now this original soupy animation here go render on top again, right? Maybe combine it somehow. So what I'll do is, and delete that first frame. What I'll do is combine the two. So what I'll do is I'll have this one here loaded as the current one, right? And then I'll select the other one here and make that the animated swap. That's kind of like another animation going in parallel. And then we need to decide how to combine those. Now you can do that in different places. One here in the upper right corner where you see the big previews, that's the brush image, that's the paper texture, and that's the current image. Well, when you click it, it combines it with the other image, the one that's in the animated swap. And so this one here, this one that we have in the animated swap, it's going to make it quite dark because the default blend mode is multiply and there's a lot of darkness in that swap image. So maybe we can change it to something different, like an additive. That would make it a bit brighter, and we would still see a bit of cloudiness here in front, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now we're trying to see that there is still some matter, or some not dark matter but bright matter, or gases, or a mix of all that in there. Another thing you might want to do is divide or screen mode. That combines a little bit better with both. Try a few here. Let's try some of the others. Greater than. So when we have some gases that are brighter, they will stay and show. Like here, we'll see them in front. So that makes it look like there's something in front here. But it should be moving also, so that's not perfect. Let's see. Oh, soft light, hard light. Some of these are great too. Try Phoenix. No, that's way too bright. Try a bunch of these. There's this vivid light, soft light. Yeah, that's gonna be a bit more like it. Okay, so now the thing is, this one in the front should also be subject to some of that zooming and flying past us. So I would recommend, before we composite the two, we actually take a look at this one. Let's load this. Let's kill the first frame because it's still there, and we'll make an even faster zoom on that. Right. So this one here, we can go and go to the transform filter in the timeline and really apply a scaling that's of very significant measure here. Scaling and movement as well. Even rotation, perhaps, if we want to add a bit more turbulent appearance to that. So what we'll do is keyframe to the start, keyframe to the end, we'll scale in, we'll zoom in, we'll even rotate a tiny little notch, keyframe that, and then apply that. So that thing is going to fly past us much faster because it's much closer. All right, and you can do this, repeat it a few times if you want to go even faster on the second pass. It's just taking whatever your latest was and animate that. So now you have a very strong movement on this cloud system. Let's do this twice. All right, let's do an undo. So we have just one pass applied, and we can now use that if we store it. Store to disk. It's going to come here somewhere. There it is. That's our good front line animation. Let's make this a swap image. Let's go back to the planets, all right, and enable the two. And again, not in multiply mode, but oops, that's not what we want. Let's go. We want to have probably an additive or a divide. Let's see, divide. What's that going to do? Here. Oh, that's way too bright. Although I like it too. It's just, oh, that's actually great. If you had an explosion, right? If you had a supernova event here, look at that. Oh man, that's awesome. We could possibly apply an alpha channel to dim it a little bit in terms of how much of that. Let's try a few others. Let's do subtractive. No, that's kind of not so good. Around gray, maybe too dark. Tracing paper. Ah, now we're talking. Yeah, now we have some clouds that are whisking by us. Again, the additive I think was somewhat promising because we have some bright clouds. There you go. Alright, look at that. Okay, let's do that. So this one will combine simply like this. That's one way to do it. Right, simply merge with swap. Not just this frame for the current swap image, but the whole animation. So that's a quick and easy way to combine frame for frame. And then we go back to loading. So first of all, we store this animation again. Store to disk. Now we have the generation 2 of this planet animation. And then we'll restore this blast and apply this animation one more time. All right, so now we have an even faster zoom. And now maybe this one we want to also colorize differently. This one is really red hot plasma. Let's go do a color add a bit reddishness to that, and get rid of the blue to some extent. There you go, apply that. If you wanted, you could make that change over time. Right, again, let's undo and actually make this keyframe. So at first it doesn't heat up, or maybe it heats up with a blue blast at first, something like this, and then it cools down or it heats up. I don't know, whichever way we want this. Let's say something like this at first, keyframe that, and then go to cooling off, something like this. There you go, keyframe and apply. So we have now this animation sequence, and we will want to store this one as well. Store to disk. And now that we've stored it to disk, there you go. Right, that's the one that's even moving faster. So let's restore our planets in which we have already composited the first blast. There's the first blast sequence. And now we'll enable this one as an animated swap to combine one more time. This time, I don't know, let's try a few more. Soft light. Yeah, look at that. Nice. Alright, so let's go apply that. Now this time, instead of combining it here, you could do the merge with swap. Let me show you one other way. You can do, let's not blend them here, but instead go to the filter and combine with swap. Right, and so here is a number of filter combination modes you can also choose. And then there's even one more, which is in the timeline editor. Check this, there's a couple of combines here, combine with swap. You can even mix how much combining you want, or how, which one you want to show. Do you want to show the protoplanetary mass transitioning to the planets? Right, how about that? Let's do that. Let's go from here to here at the very end, and we see the creation of the planetary system as it happens. Alright, so here we have a very different animation, and it all started from a quick little render filter. And of course we need to have some big bright star here, a new star that's blasting all this solar wind away. And what we'll do is we will use one more in the timeline. Down in the timeline at the very bottom, there's a group of animated filters, and we'll go and grab the lens flares for that. Right, so put the lens flare here, give it some size, scrub through that to see if it is where you want it. If it's not, let's give it here. Let's see the flare settings and see what better flares we might want to use. This one, for instance, a young star, a bright blue young star, and then make sure you position it where it makes sense relative to where you see the highlights on the planet here, right? That reflection, you wouldn't want the star here because that reflection shows it's got to be around here somewhere, right? And then what you could do is also animate the intensity of that. So at the beginning of the animation we have not a whole lot, and then just very shortly after that, and if you need more granularity on that timeline, just grab the edge here. Just a few frames after that we have a supernova here, or the fingerprint of God, and it goes really bright. Keyframe that, and then it fizzles down to Mother Earth's nature's sun. There you go, somewhere around here. So we have an animation that goes like this. There you go, Beautiful SGS. All right, let's apply that. And I call that a day. I've just created the universe. I'm busy. I'm tired. All right, proud of it too. Let's see. There you go. And if that still moves too fast, we can still, of course, use the motion prediction module to further animate that. Let's do that one more time. Let's store that to disk. Let's minimize those stored copies. This is our good one so far. And let's just make this now one more time a slightly slower animation with the motion prediction module. Let's give it a lot. Some of the movement is fast at first, so we want it to find it. We want it to think about a lot and find it if possible, and then do a grid spacing, something like that, and just go with 2 times as many. 3 frames from 111 to 215 roughly. So there we go. Now there's a few other things you could do. If you want to show like a plasma shockwave, sort of a spherical dislocation, that's another cool thing you can do with one of the photographic filter that does a spherical displacement, and you animate that again with the keyframe, so it's not showing it all the time, but just initially, and then kind of fizzles away. So here is just the start of many things you can do with it. I hope you enjoyed this very long tutorial, and I hope it'll be inspiring for your game designs, and you'll be able to put this to good work. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon again.